In the spring of 1945, in central Germany, a military unit moved without orders that would survive on paper. The war was officially ending, but records were already fragmenting. Men advanced under commands that would soon disappear. What happened to them was never fully entered into history. By early April 1945, Germany was no longer a unified battlefield. The front lines had collapsed into disconnected zones of resistance, surrender, and confusion. German military command structures were failing faster than the armies themselves. Orders were delayed, rewritten, or never delivered. Entire formations moved based on assumptions rather than directives. The unit, later referred to only in fragmented documents, was assembled under these conditions. It was not newly formed. It was a composite unit. Remnants of depleted infantry companies, rear area personnel, training battalions, and reassigned support troops were merged into a provisional formation. No official designation was finalized. No permanent regimental number was assigned. Most of the men were exhausted veterans or barely trained replacements. Their uniforms were inconsistent but still German. Field gray tunics, worn insignia, simplified rank markings. Weapons varied. Standard-issue rifles mixed with older models pulled from storage. Ammunition was limited. Food was scarcer. The unit's role was unclear from the start. Some officers believed they were tasked with delaying advancing Allied forces along secondary roads. Others understood their mission as securing withdrawal corridors for retreating formations. There were also rumors of a planned surrender movement that required controlled positioning of troops away from populated areas. Communication with higher command was unreliable. Radio contact was sporadic. Written orders arrived late or contradicted one another. At least one set of orders bore a command stamp that no longer existed. Despite this, the unit moved, marching mostly at night, avoiding main roads, passing through villages already stripped of authority. Civilians watched silently. White flags appeared in windows before soldiers arrived. Official casualty tracking had already begun to fail across the collapsing German military system. Medical units were overrun or dissolved. Field hospitals abandoned records to evacuate staff. Clerks destroyed files to prevent capture. Some records were burned deliberately. Others were simply left behind. This unit existed within that administrative vacuum. Its soldiers were present. They were armed. They were commanded. But their presence was becoming invisible. By mid-April, the unit crossed into a sector no longer clearly assigned to any army group. Maps were outdated. Enemy positions were assumed, not confirmed. The men advanced without knowing whether they were approaching a front line, a surrender zone, or nothing at all. No official casualty ledger followed them. No replacement lists were attached. From the perspective of surviving archives, the unit had already begun to vanish. The further the unit moved, the less it resembled a formal military formation. Columns stretched unevenly. Officers struggled to maintain discipline without authority backing their commands. Desertions increased, often without confrontation. Men simply stepped out of formation and did not return. Encounters with Allied forces were brief and chaotic. There were no sustained battles recorded. Only scattered engagements. Sudden exchanges of fire. Short retreats. Occasional surrenders. Some groups within the unit laid down weapons voluntarily. Others attempted to regroup deeper into forested areas. Commanders disagreed on how to proceed. One faction argued for immediate surrender to avoid unnecessary loss. Another insisted on holding positions to maintain the appearance of resistance. Logistical collapse intensified the situation. Ammunition shortages forced rationing of fire. Medical supplies were nearly gone. Wounded men were treated with improvised bandages or left behind in civilian buildings marked with chalk symbols. Deaths began to occur without documentation. Men killed during skirmishes were buried quickly. Graves were unmarked or marked only with fragments of equipment. Names were not recorded. Identification tags were sometimes removed. Sometimes they were lost. At some point, the unit received an order to relocate toward a designated assembly area. The origin of the order was unclear. The signature was unreadable. The stamp did not match any active command. The movement toward this location resulted in the unit being caught between advancing Allied forces and collapsing German lines. Retreat was impossible. Forward movement was dangerous. Radio silence increased. When contact was finally made with Allied troops, it did not resemble a formal surrender. There was confusion. Some soldiers surrendered in groups. Others fled. A portion of the unit attempted to break away entirely. No consolidated surrender document exists. No official count of prisoners corresponds to the estimated size of the unit. The numbers do not align. In the weeks that followed, Allied intelligence reports referenced unidentified German formations encountered in the region. They were described vaguely. Strength unknown. Designation unknown. Casualties unconfirmed. German post-war casualty lists did not include the unit. Its personnel were not accounted for collectively. Individual names surfaced sporadically. Most did not. By the time formal record reconstruction began, the administrative trail was already gone. The unit had existed too late, too briefly, and too far outside the systems designed to preserve it. The final days of the unit were not marked by a single battle. They were defined by fragmentation. Small groups operated independently. Orders no longer circulated. Rank distinctions blurred. Survival replaced command. In one forested area, a detachment attempted to establish a defensive position. It lasted less than a day. Artillery fire forced withdrawal. Several men were killed. Their bodies were never recovered. Elsewhere, soldiers surrendered to advancing Allied patrols. Some were taken as prisoners of war. Others were disarmed and released due to logistical constraints. Their names were not processed correctly. Some were recorded under incorrect units. Some were not recorded at all. A group attempted to reach a rumored surrender corridor. They never arrived. Local civilians later reported hearing gunfire at night. No official report followed. By early May 1945, the war in Germany officially ended. Victory declarations were issued. Casualty summaries were compiled. This unit did not appear in them. Families searched for information. Inquiries were filed. Responses were delayed or generic. Missing. Presumed captured. Presumed dead. No centralized acknowledgement existed. The unit had no final report. No surrender certificate. No casualty ledger. In post-war reconstruction, archivists relied on surviving documentation. This unit left almost none. Without paperwork, it could not be reconstructed. Without reconstruction, it could not be remembered. It became a gap in the records. A silence in official history. When the war in Germany officially ended in May 1945, the administrative machinery of conclusion moved faster than the work of understanding what had actually happened in its final weeks, and in that process, certain formations were never properly accounted for. the unit that had moved through central Germany without a finalized designation did not receive a concluding report, a confirmed surrender record, or a formal casualty summary, and its absence went largely unnoticed amid the scale of the collapse. Post-war authorities focused on stabilizing occupied territories, processing millions of prisoners, and reconstructing what remained of military archives, relying heavily on documents that had survived evacuation, destruction, or abandonment. This unit had left almost no such trace. Without a definitive name, without a clear chain of command at the moment of its dissolution, and without a centralized ledger of personnel, it could not be reconstructed as a coherent entity. Individual soldiers appeared sporadically in unrelated files, sometimes listed under different units, sometimes recorded only as missing, and sometimes not recorded at all. Families seeking information encountered a system built on partial data and standardized responses, where inquiries were answered with uncertainty rather than clarity and where absence itself became an administrative conclusion. Over time, provisional classifications hardened into permanent entries, and provisional absences became fixed gaps in the historical record. As archives were consolidated and official histories written, priority was given to formations that could be clearly traced through orders, reports, and confirmed engagements, while units that existed only briefly and left behind fragmented paperwork were excluded by default rather than decision. This unit was not removed through intent or concealment, but through procedural limitation, as history increasingly relied on what could be verified and cross-referenced. The men who had served within it did not vanish collectively in reality, but the unit as a whole dissolved into separate outcomes that no longer pointed back to a shared experience. Some survived captivity and returned home, carrying memories that were never formally connected to a recognized formation. Others died in scattered encounters, were buried without identification, or were absorbed into broader casualty figures that erased context. As years passed, the war was reduced to established narratives, structured chronologies, and statistical clarity, and within that framework there was no space for a unit that could not be clearly placed, measured, or summarized. The absence became complete not at the moment the unit ceased to function, but when record reconstruction ended and unanswered questions were quietly set aside. From that point forward, the unit existed only as an implied presence within incomplete documents, indirect references, and missing lines in casualty lists. It had passed through the final phase of the war at a time when systems were already failing, and by the time order returned, there was nothing left to anchor it to the official memory of the conflict. The war moved into history, the archives closed around what remained, and this unit was left outside that closure, not remembered as destroyed, not acknowledged as surrendered, but simply not restored. What endured was not a story preserved in records, but a silence created by administrative collapse and the limits of reconstruction. In that silence, the unit remained exactly what the surviving documents allowed it to be, present once, then absent, and ultimately uncounted. If this story mattered to you, consider subscribing. More forgotten history is coming.